welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode, I'm discussing the 2018 science fiction action prequel, BumbleBee, as directed this time around by Travis Knight, which actually marks the first time anybody else bar Michael Bay has directed a live-action Transformers film since their very first adventure back in 2007. Bay stays on as the movie's producer for what is essentially almost a soft reboot of the franchise, acting as a prequel to the main arm of the franchise, being now the 6th movie in the overall Transformers live-action movie series, but setting up elements and kind of retconning a few others along the way that don't necessarily gel with those directed by Bay. An origin story of sorts set in 1987, we find the Transformers' home world, Cybertron, on the brink of destruction, with the two warring factions, the Autobots and the Decepticons, tearing the place apart. The leader of the Autobots, Optimus Prime, as voiced once again by Peter Kollin, sends out his one of his loyal allies, BumbleBee, or B127 as he is known at that time, as voiced by Dylan O'Brien, to kind of Earth in order to establish a base of operations from which to launch a counter-offensive against the Decepticons. However, it isn't long before Bumblebee comes up against some Decepticon opposition, and after a brutal encounter, he's kind of left for dead with all his circuits all torn up. With his last remaining ounce of energy, he manages to transform himself into a 1967 Volkswagen Beetle. Relegated to the scrap heap, he's later found by headstrong teen Charlie Watson, as played by Hailee Steinfeld, who's jazzed about her new car, but has no idea what's hidden under the chassis. Needless to say, soon Charlie finds out that her car is in fact a Transformer, but one with no recollection of his true purpose, and so unknowing of the danger that continues to pursue them, both Charlie and Bumblebee strike up a close friendship as each comes to terms with the changes in their lives, and indeed an ever-persistent Decepticon threat. So, firstly, this movie is strikingly different to Bay's movies in so many ways. It completely tears itself away from the more convoluted plot lines and tangled mess that series had gotten itself into, to break away and bring everything back down to basics. Almost a minimalist approach that kind of puts its characters right at its core. Both Transformers and humans alike get equal billing here, which quite frankly is amazing in its own right, and something the series was certainly veering away from. Bumblebee and Charlie are worthwhile characters, ones we want to get to know, which makes their friendship and the bond ever that more sweet, and the story ever more engaging. Its simpler tone and delivery makes a refreshing change for the franchise, and as a result it's not only much more digestible, but also relatable on an emotional level. We've come to know Bumblebee quite well over the previous installments, and so to see him in a more vulnerable state certainly pulls at the heartstrings. It's a very nostalgic movie too, definitely rocking those 80s vibes, and its premise could have been plucked straight from the pages of the 1982 Steven Spielberg movie, E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Feels light, uncumbered, and a definite throwback to the alien buddy movies that proved popular during that same era. What I did find hard to take on board was the difference in the Transformers designs from those kind of used in the Bay movies. Now, I know this is going to be extremely controversial, but there was just kind of something much more evolved, if you will, about the designs used previously, whereas those used here, as absolutely exquisite as they are, had much more of a mechanical feel to them. Those Bay kind of developed seemed like actual beings that could transform. The designs used here feel much more robotic, computers with feelings, much more square, blocky, and although the transformations are indeed still pretty amazing, they are much more mechanized, less fluid, less organic. I know that they've kind of gone for a look that better recreates, the classic look of the Transformers from the toys themselves and the TV series, the original movie, back in the 1980s. And in that, the look certainly works. It's on target with expectations, I think, in that respect. But as I've kind of no real personal connection to the franchise in that respect, I must kind of admit that I do still very much prefer the style the Transformers used by Bay. Also, it's kind of really hard to really say what indeed this is a prequel to, or whether or not in actual fact it's more of a soft reboot, or a kind of a sly reboot, you know? I don't actually blame it at all for retconning most of the Bay era, I don't. Especially the events that transpire in the last entry, the last night. It was a mess, and, you know, they actually do an excellent job at cleaning that up. So no complaints there. But personally, I think it would have kind of served its purpose better if they kind of just made it clear that this was a completely new setup, a new kind of timeline for the Transformers legacy. I think that would have worked, and I think that would have done away with any kind of pretense connection or continuity that I was kind of expecting there to be. And they could have brought loose even further than they actually did. And I think, to be honest, would have been the best thing they could have done for the franchise at that point. It feels like they were trying to kind of press the reset button, but just didn't kind of have the nerve to push it all the way. But it is certainly a wonderfully charming story with friendship, emotion at its heart, nostalgia too. There's more than enough to enjoy here, from Herbie going bananas to plenty of Last Starfighter moments. It captures the essence of a genre, paying particular attention to, in captivating and engaging its audience throughout, with its awesome kind of alien visitor, take me to your leader kind of vibe. Overall, this movie turns what we had kind of come to expect from this franchise right on its head, pulling back the reins, giving us much more of a simplified, relaxed plot, removed from the convoluted mess the franchise kind of had become, to yield something much more heartfelt, certainly much more homely and humble. It has much more of an emotional core than any other entry in the franchise. It doesn't go in for spectacle, but I think it certainly kind of creates quite a nice balance between the two. It never feels stretched or saturated in either respect. It is a very different Transformers film that brings a real personal and involved approach to its storytelling, putting its characters, human and Transformer alike, first and foremost. A warm tale of friendship, and with a more kind of toned down and no frills approach. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed. If you have, please do leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe for more movie reviews, show reactions, and other movie related content. Absolutely loved having you at SciFirst MovieTalk, and definitely love to have you back. Most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.